All right, let's talk Android 13. Hey, what's up? I'm KBHD here. So I just did my iOS 16 hands-on a couple weeks ago, did my walkthrough and demo and everything. So as I was digging through Android 13 for a sort of similar demo, two things struck me. One, the iOS videos always get just absolutely nuts views, literally every single time. And that's not just because the iPhone is already popular, but iOS updates just get saturation so quickly. There's a couple sources estimating iOS 15 was running on 90% of compatible iPhones well within a year of it going out. So across the board, most people who had bought an iPhone in the last 4 years knew that they're gonna get this software. Now in Android land, on the other hand, as of a week ago, the distribution chart looks a little something like this, which shows that about 13.5% are on the latest version, Android 12. A much larger 27% are on a 2-gen old version, Android 11, and then another 22% are on Android 10. And then the fragmentation just continues back from there. So this Android 13 stuff I'm about to go over, a few people, like Pixel owners in the beginning, will be the ones to get this, but then it'll much more slowly trickle out to other phones as they get updated month by month. And that's the sort of a general theme here. But then number two, in both camps, these updates are more minor than ever. Obviously, they're both very mature. In iOS, you could consider the new lock screen overhaul pretty major, but other than that, bunch of smaller stuff. And then with Android, we just had the big Material U overhaul with Android 12. So with 13, they didn't really have to overhaul things again. It's a lot of smaller tweaks. And so that's what we're seeing. But I still do think a lot of the small stuff adds up to quality of life improvements. The best analogy, if you look at the Easter eggs, this is the Android 12 Easter egg from last year, and this is the Android 13 Easter egg. It's almost the same thing, but you can tell it's a little different. But hey, here we are with the very latest and greatest from Google. I have it on my Pixel 6 Pro, and so I've gone through all of the many updates and gone through the liberty of picking my top 5 best Android 13 features. So I'm gonna start at number 5, which is the Clipboard. There are a bunch of really solid improvements to the Clipboard for copying and pasting within Android. So first thing you're gonna notice, when you go to copy something, the new box pops up in the lower left corner, whether it's text or an address or URL or whatever you copy. When you copy text, the phone will now give you a preview with the option to tap on that box and then edit the text in the clipboard. So whatever you modify in here will be saved in your clipboard so that you can paste it later. And then if you copy an image, it'll automatically take you straight into markup so you can write on it or crop it or save it, whatever you want to do. And then your phone will recognize sensitive information if it's stored in your clipboard and automatically clear it after some time. I believe it's 1 hour. So for example, my package tracking app, every time I open it, right away, it just looks and sees what's on my clipboard in case I just copied a tracking number from another app, and it asks me if I want to paste it. But if I just copied like a social security number or a password or something else random like that, I don't want that in there. So anytime any app might look into your clipboard, it'll be empty because of this new Android little Clipboard update. And Google is also now working on an official built into Android universal copy and paste between phones and tablets, so it'll just work across. We already know a Pixel tablet is coming. It's still a few months away. I guess it's sometime next year, but looking forward to that. They've done a bunch of stuff in the tablet world in this Android 13 update, but that's one of them. The Clipboard will now work across both. So then number 4 is security in general. Lots of nice security and privacy improvements. I think my favorite is that when you give photo access to apps now, you can just choose a few photos to give it access to instead of your entire library. So that catches up to what iOS has been doing for a little bit. And also now notifications are all opt-in. So apps have to ask you for permission to send notifications instead of any being allowed by default. There's also now an active app indicator at the bottom of the notification slider. Maybe that's less security and just more of being able to see what's running and closing out anything that you might not realize is killing your battery, but yeah, it's also just convenient. So then number 3 is some nice audio enhancement stuff. So Android 13 will now natively support spatial audio and Bluetooth LE for higher quality, low energy, and lower latency audio. All good stuff. Side note, I am testing the Pixel Buds Pro right now. As of today, when I'm using them, they do not support spatial audio, but there also is a blog post that says that they're going to be adding it later this year. So maybe a firmware update will eventually give me that. But so far, they are pretty impressive. Stay tuned for that review because that's coming up soon. But then number 2, this is a really interesting one. Apparently it was one of the most requested features in Android for the last little bit, and now they're adding it, which is app-specific language support. So if you're bilingual, you speak more than one language, but maybe you only use that second language in a certain app. Maybe you have a family group chat in WhatsApp, or you have a very specific use case where you just use one app in a different language. Now, Android will natively support that exact switch without you having to work around it. So you go to Settings, System, Languages and Input, and then App Languages. App developers will have to opt in to do this, so not every app shows up here right off the bat. But I believe this should be a pretty quick checkbox that they flip, and then they'll be supported in multiple languages. The whole system UI changes to be the new language just for that one app. That's sweet. I'm not even someone who will actually use that feature, but I can understand how that'd be very useful, so that's pretty cool. So then last but not least, number one is aesthetics. So Material You was the big overhaul for Android 12. That was the big visual change that they'd made. So now they're down to tweaking a lot of the things that they'd initially changed for Android 12, and I think a lot of these changes are good. So in the customization section, the theme picker for your wallpapers is much more precise. There's 16 different multicolor options and 16 different single color options now, instead of the 4 of each we had before, and there's a lot more granularity between them. Then there's the media player. This one's nice. The notification is bigger, and it changes color based on the media that you're listening to. So if it's music or a podcast, it's got the album art going. And then it also has a squiggly line when there's actually something playing. I'm not going to say what that looks like. But yeah, if you tap the playback location, there's a bigger volume slider, and you can quickly switch to or add more sources like headphones or speakers or your car or whatever. But that new media player is sweet. And then there's even just some tiny, tiny visual stuff. Like there's a slightly new lock screen clock. There's a slightly new unlocking animation, if you'll notice that. The shortcut to get to settings has moved from the middle to the bottom of quick settings to be much more reachable. I actually like it here. And the gesture bar at the bottom is now slightly larger and thicker. See, told you it was minor. There's a lot of little stuff, but again, it adds up to quality of life improvements. There's also a ton of bug fixes and performance improvements and Android runtime improvements. Hopefully things are generally less buggy and more smooth. There's a whole page of just dozens of bug fixes that they've added. I'll link it below if you want to read through those, but ideally, so far, should be running better on phones like the Pixel 6 than Android 12 was. I do also want to mention though, I think there's one thing that got worse. I think they low-key made some of the haptic patterns worse. I hope they think a little bit about those. But generally, that's pretty much it. That's Android 13 for you. Let me know if you're hoping to get that update on whatever phone you're using, and let me know what your favorite feature is in the comment section below. Either way, that's been it. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys later. Peace.